Most muscular aches and pains are a sequela of poor movement mechanics. This happens because the correct muscles are snoozing on the job, so you're forced to compensate with the wrong muscles. Most of our problems arise at the main arch being the external obliques. So the million-dollar question is, which one of your obliques is the culprit, the right one or the left one? What if I could show you how to figure that out in just a few seconds? Now, the psoas muscle is the most underrated muscle in the internal torque chain. It is the base of the internal torque chain pyramid, the second layer being the external obliques. I want you to think of the external oblique and the psoas muscle being your strongest hip flexor. It's a trunk flexor. Think of them as being married. So if the right psoas is weak, your right external oblique is weak. Sit on the floor and put a ruler on the wall, and then sit directly in front of the ruler. Make sure you're not so close to the wall that your feet are against it and you can use the wall to help you cheat. By the same token, we're not going to use our hands to cheat either. So I suggest we use a pec stick. We're going to keep our knees locked out. It's important the knee be completely straight so that we are assessing the psoas. If you bend the knee, then you can compensate with your rec fem. But when it's straight, it renders the rec fem actively insufficient. The rec fem is a two-joint muscle, so when the knee is straight, it makes it very difficult for the rectus femoris to generate any tension. So that's why we say it knocks it out. So that means you're genuinely using your psoas to flex the hip. In other words, people who bend the knee to do the psoas test are cheating because they're compensating with their rectus femoris muscle. I suggest either do it with your toes pointed or them flexed, but make sure you're consistent. Do not lean back, and then you're going to lift one leg up. Don't lean back. Now I suggest you hold it isometrically so you know for sure, and you can see what number you're at. How did I know when to stop raising my leg? Because breathing is related to mobility. I inhaled through my nose as I raised my leg up. The moment I stopped inhaling was the moment I stopped raising my leg. If I choose to ignore the end of my inhalation and keep moving my leg, guess what's going to happen? Compensatory movement patterns. So that means we're not assessing what it is we're trying to assess. So use your breath to keep you honest. Repeat for the other side. Leg straight, toe pointed, don't lean back. You can see that my right active hip flexion is much better than the left side. Therefore, the left psoas and external oblique are weaker. Be sure to document your baseline measurements, and then once a month you can reassess yourself and see if you are indeed making progress. Let's call it the Sarah Solomon Psoas Test, and we'll all agree to do it exactly the way I described it in this video, because that would be a standardized approach, and we know that my approach minimizes compensatory movement patterns, so it'll increase the validity and reliability. I first noticed a correlation between the psoas and the external oblique when I was hanging like Batman from my high bar. I noticed I could not contact my left foot to the high bar. I realized this was a really cool assessment, that I could figure out which external oblique and psoas is weaker in less than 5 seconds. Only problem is, not very many people in the population can hang from a high bar like Batman. So I thought, fine, we'll just lie everybody down on their backs and get them to plow. Only problem with that is that most people actually can't fold at the pelvis, and they compensate with their spines, then they bend their knees and compensate with their rec fems. Can you see the difference between these two patterns? One, I'm folding at the pelvis. The other one, I'm cheating with my spine. In this example, I'm cheating with my spine. You actually don't see hip flexion happening. Here you see hip flexion. You can see I'm folding at the pelvis. Watch again. Now, in this example, I'm folding at the pelvis. Legs are straight. If your psoas muscles are weak, then you'll cheat with your spine, and you'll bend your knees to cheat with your rec fem. You need mobile inner hamstrings to do it. So if you have tight hamstrings, then it'll limit your hip flexion. That's called passive insufficiency. So that's why everybody was compensating by bending their knees and using their spine. So my next idea was to think, how would I do this on my mom, who's 71 years old and can't fold her pelvis in half or hang from a bar like Batman? So I came up with the seated version with a ruler. To help you develop a keen eye for detecting which psoas and external oblique are weaker, I filmed a whole bunch of deleterious movement patterns, so check it out. Let's take a look at ideal. Well, I'm not ideal, but this is my impression of ideal. We're looking for symmetry on the concentric and eccentric. Your right side of the body should be a mirror image of what's happening on the left. I keep my legs slightly apart so that I can't cheat by holding them together. That would be a crutch. You can also do it from the rear view to make sure your spine stays symmetrical. Let's look what happens when the external oblique and psoas are weaker on the left. So that means your strong side is going to take over, and that's why you see me leading with the right leg. You can see the left one is lagging behind. You can see I'm tipped. Now let's look at the plow. So you'll notice that I struggle to touch the left foot to the barbell. The right one, not a problem at all. In fact, it's really easy for me. The left side is a struggle, and you can see I'm fasciculating like crazy. So be consistent, toes pointed, legs straight, slightly apart. You don't want them to be touching each other because then they can be a crutch for each other. When you film it from this view, you can see how I am leading the movement with my stronger right side. It's your turn to do the seated Psoas test. Let me know which side is weaker, the left or the right.